Okay, super quick overview on Diogenes of Sinope, one of my favorite guys to mildly read about. Uh, Diogenes is the first Cynic, I suppose. I believe you can call him the first Cynic, but he comes from the school of Cynicism. Key idea: the whole point is to live in accordance with nature, specifically reject social conventions, and then embrace poverty and honesty. It's kind of like the first white boy to convert to Buddhism, I guess. I don't know if that's fair or not, but he kind of rocked in that way. Diogenes, he's pretty colorful and controversial figure from ancient Greece and from the ancient Greek philosophers. He lived in the streets of Athens. That's kind of where that's where he spent the majority of his life. I think he was exiled from his hometown. And while he was in Athens, and then he also, I believe, moved to Corinth as well, but he renounced all of his possessions and he mocked all of the societal hypocrisy that he would see around him. And that was kind of his whole philosophy, is out of this sort of practical ideal of a lived satire of materialism, politics, and pretense. The whole idea is kind of a rejection or negation of the false framework that society presents, I guess, if that makes sense. So he would look at virtue over wealth, looked at happiness as something that comes not from possessions or pleasure, but from a place of having complete self-sufficiency. One of the stories or examples of this is he had thrown away everything in his life, essentially, and he was living out of a giant wine barrel in the middle of the market square in Athens, and he witnessed a boy. So he's basically a homeless, hobo, just complete vagabond. And he saw a boy go to the river or go to the place to retrieve drinking water. And he used his hands as a cup. So he cups his hands and puts it into the water and then drinks from it. And Diogenes witnesses this. And he's devastated and states, even a child has beaten me in simplicity. Even this kid, this snot-nosed twerp is able to perform my philosophy better than I am because I use a cup, and that's the last possession that he really had was a cup. And so he throws out the cup out of the aspiration to live as simply as possible, to not have to rely on an outside external society, an abstract societal construct of a cup, right? He would deface the currency. I think that's kind of the big reason that he was exiled from Sinope or whatever. I believe it's pronounced Sinope. Please forgive me, I'm not that smart. But Diogenes' father, he was a banker. Interesting. So, your dad's a banker. You have a whole bunch of guilt over that, and so then you convert to this Buddhist lifestyle, living in poverty and relying on virtue and rejecting wealth, right? Witnessing the evil banking system firsthand or something, right? But his dad's a banker, and allegedly Diogenes is exiled for defacing the currency. And the reason that he does this is to expose the face values and then replace them with true virtue, Xing out the faces on the currency or whatever, because it's all just a symbolic nonsense. You know what I mean? The money doesn't actually have value. It's just the societal construct that places the value onto it, I guess. Big thing too is he would live according to nature. So he would reject artificial social constructions, so things, fame, luxury, and even shame. So he ate, slept, and then would perform natural functions in public. So he would pleasure himself in the market square, and when confronted about it, he would be like, "Oh, if only I could relieve my hunger by rubbing my belly." You know what I mean? And he would just publicly defecate. I think he had a theater. He just needed to go, so he would just pop a squat and poop in the middle of a theater during a play or whatever. And it's basically just he just had this sort of compulsion to antagonize and reject the consciousnesses of other people. This is something that I maybe you feel this in your own life, the pressures of society or of your peer group or of other people around you are polluting or mutating your thoughts in a way that you feel is unhealthy or unnatural, or that you're too weak-willed to, that you end up bending to other people, and so you have this compulsion to do the exact opposite, I guess, if that makes sense. you have this like contrary impulse, based off of the peer pressure that you feel from the greater society around you. And sometimes that's a healthy thing, and then sometimes, you know, you take that, you get addicted to that particular idea, and you follow it to its logical conclusion, and then it doesn't work anymore, I guess, is kind of an interesting thing. Usually, you know, you find like when you take the purest form of an idea, it ends up becoming corrupted, or it doesn't actually end up working. Like everything is sort of has to be balanced. Like when you take any of these particular ideas, or you know, the schools of philosophy, if you follow them purely and completely, it doesn't actually end up working. You have to like kind of balance them out with other things. But yeah, like I said, he lived in a giant ceramic jar in the Athenian marketplace, and all he owned was a cloak, a stick, a bag, and basically nothing else. But you know, the whole idea is to have this radical simplicity, which is to show that human needs are minimal and luxury enslaves. I have this saying, I probably stolen from Fight Club or something about, but like I think about this often, about my owning your things, or your things owning you, and that being like being terrified of ruining your work desk, or your tool, like using your tools to and then destroying them, or looking at things as being more than tools, or looking at your possessions as being more than your possessions, and rather that those possessions are possessing you. Like people are so anxious. Some guy was talking about how much they hate bed covers in truck beds. You know, that the plasticky cover, so that you don't have the metal truck bed. You know what I mean? And how ugly and useless they are, and that your truck is meant to be used. That was something recently. Recently, I just used my, you know, I have a vehicle that I was transporting stuff. You know, like a big, like, you know, essentially moving out a house or a storage unit. The details don't really matter, I suppose. But I scratched up the vehicle, and the person that I'm doing the service to like is overly apologetic and like concerned about that. And that's so far from anywhere I comprehend or understand, almost to my detriment, to when I'm helping somebody else, I forget that if I just recently like helped somebody move, and I get anxious that my instinct is to be flippant with people's objects, like, you know, like throwing boxes around or throwing the furniture around in a way that's callous or uncaring. So that's something that I always have to check myself when I'm interacting with other people, because when it comes to my own possessions, there's not too much care or concern about not scuffing up the couch when I'm moving it. You know what I mean? Well, back to Diogenes. So I also believed in frank speech. Maybe I'm failing in that right now. Diogenes practiced a fearless, honest speech. He insulted the powerful, mocked pretentious philosophers, and said whatever he believed to be true. To him, shameless honesty was the highest virtue. Again, when you take something like that so literally, I don't know that you actually end up benefiting yourself or others. I don't know that truth is necessarily the highest value, or actually, when it is your highest value, you discover that lying is a necessity. Like, you can't obtain truth without noble lies, is kind of my experience personally, but it's kind of a tragic thing to be polluted with this idea of capital T truth. That's always been something that's plagued me, the idea that it's knowable, or that it's a pursuit that you should even go after, or that you deserve truth, like that you deserve to be dealt with honestly. Tim Dillon the comedian, has a rant that rings in my head about, like, you don't deserve to be dealt with honestly. Like, you have to earn honesty or whatever. So that's somewhere I guess I just disagree, or I haven't worked out, I guess, in my own life, because I used to live by this, like, the idea of frank speech. People, you know, growing up as a young kid with like little to lose, people used to call me a savage, because I would be funny and I would be frank and I would be honest in everything that I would say, to my own detriment or to the offense of other people, to other powerful people or whatever. I'll tell you that has not served me well in my life. And now I'm reserved, and I am, you know, scared to say anything out loud, to be honest. So some anecdotes, some funny things or interesting things. He would walk through Athens in daylight, like during the daytime, going through the marketplace, and he would carry a lit lantern. and he would say, I'm looking for an honest man, as he like puts the lantern up to people, as if the light in the the daylight, and then the light shining the light during daylight would like reveal the honesty in a man or something. But it wasn't like a literal thing. It was a critique of like moral corruption and false virtue, you know what I mean? But like that is kind of a funny idea to me, to be in the marketplace and go up to like the scummy like either the tax collector or the guy that price gouges or has shady business practices, and while he's in the process of doing that, the used car salesman of the of Athens marketplace, whatever the equivalent is, shining a light at them, and being like wondering like if they're an honest person. That's a clever thing. Maybe that's a tactic for the next time that you go to the car lot, is to bring your flashlight or turn your flashlight on, and do a double check and ask if they're an honest person, or say that that's what you're there to do, is to, I'm not here kicking tires or window shopping, I'm here looking for an honest man, when the salesman comes up to you. But one of my favorite things is an encounter with Alexander the Great that Diogenes has. So Diogenes is being his layabout vagabond self, lying on the beach, and he's sunbathing, and Alexander stumbles upon him, and has, because this guy is, Diogenes is famous in his local town. Alexander comes and hears word of him and goes and seeks him out to go see this insane character, this interesting guy. And Alexander approaches Diogenes. Alexander the Great Conqueror, right? Brings the world together, and is just the mightiest, most powerful person probably on the planet of the time. It's like, Donald Trump at the peak of his presidency coming up to a homeless guy, because this homeless guy is such a character, and comes up to him and says, while he's like sunbathing, his eyes are closed, he's barely paying attention, barely lucid, barely aware of this emperor's, this conqueror's, this great person, quote unquote, right? Great in the context of everything Diogenes is against, I suppose. And Alexander says, Diogenes, like, you're such a wonderful character, and I'm such a powerful man. I have all of this that I could offer you. Say the word, anything at all, and it would be yours. I am happy to give you anything, because you're such a famous and exciting character. You know what I mean? Like, I want to give you a gift, right? Like, you think of like the Nelk Boys, or all the Joe Rogan giving Lex Friedman his watch, or like, you think of like the influencer gift trading game that you kind of witness all the time, like Dana White like giving people like these eccentric gifts, or Donald Trump even giving away eccentric gifts, and Donald Trump offering that to like a homeless guy, Alexander offering this to a homeless guy, like, whatever you want, it's yours. And Diogenes responds, could you please stand out of my sunlight? I'm sunbathing over here, which could be an incredibly offensive thing to say, like to say, oh, could you please get out of my way? I'm enjoying the present. I'm enjoying the moment of life. I already have everything I need. My whole kind of being and existence is here. And perhaps, that was a test by, Alexander the Great, hearing the philosophy of this crazy vagabond that lives in Athens. Maybe Alexander is tempting him to see if he lives up to his own virtues, right? Knowing that I have so much, that if I offer you everything, that maybe you would be tempted outside of your alleged virtue. But Diogenes does not fall for anything of that, and he says, please get out of my way, you're blocking the sun. Which, to Alexander's surprise, he's elated, and like he is really impressed by that. And out of hearing that, please get out of my sunlight, he responds with, out of all of the people in the world, if I could not be Alexander and I had to pick, I would wish to be Diogenes. And I believe Diogenes replies to that as, if I was not Diogenes, I would wish to be Diogenes as well. So very, very cute, funny thing. The barrel, again, a lot of this is alleged and legend, you know what I mean? That's the beauty of this time period, right? Like, Alexander was a real person, Diogenes was a real person, but there's so much myth and legend wrapped up in their existence, which I've always kind of appreciated, that there's this pseudo-historical mythos sort of blend thing going on, where, I kind of doubt that like Zeus or whatever god like sent a serpent down to impregnate Philip II, or Philip, Alexander's father. His wife is Alexander. The legend of Alexander is that his father Philip is cucked by a god, and a snake, by having a snake come mate with his wife, and that's how Alexander is conceived. I doubt that to be the case. There's also, speculation that Alexander hired Philip's bodyguard to kill him, so because Alexander was so frustrated that Philip's ambition would come to completion, that he would take over the entire world and there would be nothing left for Alexander to do. That's kind of a historical conspiracy theory, that Alexander was involved in this conspiring to have his own father killed, but that's not known to be a fact necessarily. But yeah, again, Diogenes lives in a like, all of this is, I guess a lot of this is myth. Like, no one really knows at this time exactly what's true. Like, there's not a settled science in this history, which is kind of my favorite part about the ancient Greek sort of. I don't even know if you're allowed to say, is this supposed to be ancient Greek time period or whatever, but this particular time period, this like 400 BC area, 300 to like 500 BC time frame. Again, he lived in a barrel. That's the next thing here I have in my note. Clay jar, I think, for like wine, and like, literally discarded trash. He lived in a box. You know what I mean? Like when you walk around New York and you see these makeshift like shelters or tent, in Portland. You probably see, the tent cities. You probably would have had a structure similar to that. I wonder if he would have kept a PlayStation inside of it like they do now in those tent cities. Not everybody, of course. I hope I'm not being offensive. I shouldn't stick my neck out like that. I don't care if I'm being offensive there. It's a funny observation that's real and true that I've noticed. So another thing, Diogenes, Plato once defined man as a featherless biped, which prompted Diogenes to pluck a chicken and brought it to Plato's academy and said, "Behold, behold, it's Plato's man," which caused Plato to revise his definition. So in that sort of way, that's kind of the benefit of a cynic, or of someone that is being critical, is it strengthens, the actual constructive, argument maybe, is by constantly poking holes into things, which is Diogenes' role. Maybe it actually can strengthen society. One of the things too is like Diogenes was like almost like basically beloved by like the people in his town. Not everybody, I'm sure, but like there was a culture that celebrated him and him being around. I guess maybe like he's somewhat of like a comedian, like sort of influencer character of his time or whatever. I don't know if that's okay to say, or if I like that, because the famous Norm Macdonald quote of comedians are modern day philosophers, which is very offensive to modern day philosophers. Like, it would probably be degrading to call Diogenes some sort of comedian, but he's funny, dog-like. He would be described as being dog-like. He lived as a dog. And people would ask him, why Diogenes, do you live like a dog? And he says, I fawn on those who give, I bark at those who don't, and I bite the wicked. Pretty clever. There's something appealing to this, right? So pretty neat. He lived for a long time, allegedly living to the age of like 89. And there's various different legends of how he died. People saying that he ate some bad like raw octopus while holding his breath, proving some sort of point. That's something to look into. But Athenians honored him with a statue of a dog holding a lantern. That's what I got on Diogenes. Thank you.